Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Jennifer Duke.
Hello, Michael.
All right, Jen, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast 5, which is the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still keep it to 5 minutes, but we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper business story, one that's kind of not getting the attention that it deserves, and then our favourite story. So let's jump into it. What do you reckon was the biggest business story this week?
So I think it was the launch of the new iPhones and also the growing China-US tech war. So the iPhone's half of Apple's revenue, and it was supposed to be a big week all about these new iPhones, but it actually kicked off with news that China's increasingly banning the use of iPhones for government and state-owned business workers. That hit Apple's share price by a cool $200 billion in 2 days. And just hours after Apple launched the iPhones, Beijing's foreign ministry held a press conference where its representatives said that China hadn't issued any laws and regulations to ban the purchase of those phones, but took a swipe at Apple for security incidences. The White House has also commented, with the National Security Council criticizing the move. A spokesman said that US businesses were increasingly experiencing aggressive and inappropriate retaliation from China.
Well, look, that is a big story. And I thought a big story, probably a little bit closer to home this week, was the massive week that we have seen in federal politics. There are a couple of headlines in it. The biggest event in Parliament would be the government passing its $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund legislation, going to deliver an ongoing pipeline of social and affordable rental properties. They had to secure the support of the Greens, cost an extra $1 billion to do it, but you suspect that the fight is going to keep on going from the Greens because they didn't quite get everything that they wanted, including, say, a rent cap. Outside of Parliament, the ferocious campaigning on the Voice referendum. We ticked over 1 month to go this week. The polls aren't looking good for the Yes campaign. And also a bit on Australia's role in global politics this week as well, because right back at the start of the week, which feels like about a lifetime ago now, but Prime Minister Anthony Albanese started the week at the G20, meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron and the EU Commissioner. They were talking about climate change and free trade and kind of statements criticising Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. But overall, it's really just been a massive week in politics. Most remarkable story. Can I nominate one for this one, Jen?
For sure.
Look, for me, it's all about jobs, and you would be keeping a very close eye on this because your day job is as economics correspondent for Capital Brief. But the unemployment rate is still very low. It was unchanged in August at 3.7%. We found that out this week. An extra 65,000 people found jobs in August. So clearly the market is extremely resilient. ANZ said there's a bit more to it. Most of the additional 65,000 people who found jobs in August were actually finding part-time jobs. There's underemployment is actually up. The hours worked fell slightly over the months, but still, it's a pretty remarkable state. Also remarkable were some comments by Rich Lister property developer Tim Gurner this week, who basically said that we need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. There's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them as opposed to the other way around, basically saying that unemployment needs to rise. A lot of people will likely need to lose their jobs in order to change this almost workplace culture. Pretty unpopular opinion, and he's copped a bit of criticism for it, Jen.
That was a very remarkable story. Mine was actually about Qantas losing its appeal in the High Court. So the court upheld a judgment against Qantas that its sacking of almost 1,700 staff in 2020 was in breach of the Fair Work Act. It was a David and Goliath battle that saw the unions come out with their full strength to back the ground staff and baggage handlers who were let go in the middle of COVID. And it's the latest in a string of very recent disasters for Qantas that we've both talked about at length. Qantas said it deeply regrets the personal impact on staff and will act quickly to compensate the affected staff members. The whole fiasco might actually cost the airline in excess of $200 million, and it not only has a human cost, but it also sends a message to business about corporate governance.
Yeah, good one. Now, what about your sleeper story this week?
Yeah, so my sleeper story is the European Commission's new investigation into Chinese EVs and concerns that state subsidies are distorting the market. So this is a sleeper because the Commission has 13 months to decide whether to slug Chinese car manufacturers with extra tariffs, and it could end up exploding into an all-out trade fight. It covers all battery-powered EVs from China, so it also captures those manufactured there by other companies that aren't Chinese, so that's big names like Tesla and BMW. China says its advantages are not due to subsidies and says that protectionism is poison for Europe's economy. The Commission will need to make sure it isn't seen to be anti-China, anti-competitive, and simply shoring up local industry. What was your sleeper?
Look, just a quick one for me that we seem to be in the middle of a bit of a crime wave. We had Myer CEO John King talking about the fact that they've seen a spike in theft at stores, which has risen significantly. It's like an extra $16 million in lost stock. It is part of a trend. The big supermarkets have been reporting it as well. The Australian Retailers Association says stock loss is about 2 to 3% of total retail sales. Bit of a sleeper because it'll flow on to shareholders, affecting the bottom line, might flow on to consumers in kind of higher prices, also to our privacy as well, because there's now a proliferation of new cameras kind of popping up in stores to help try and deal with this problem. I just thought it was quite an interesting story. What was your favourite one this week?
My favorite story of the week is the Google antitrust trial in the US. Google's got a 90% market share on search and says the reason for this is it's simply much better than everyone else at doing what it does. But the US government is arguing that Google abused its power to become a monopoly in internet search. This could result in a major industry-wide shift in how tech giants can operate and possibly how consumers are able to use the internet. Google has undeniably spent billions of dollars with major companies like Apple and Samsung to ensure they're the default search browser on iPhones and Android devices. But Google says that consumers are free to use whatever rival service they like. That includes Bing and DuckDuckGo. What was yours?
DuckDuckGo. Well, that's a bit of a blast from the past. Now, very quickly, my favourite story was the annual ethics index from the Governance Institute. The usual headlines, really: media is seen as the least ethical sector, which I suppose we shan't take too personally, will we, Jen? And real estate agents are the least ethical occupation. Firefighters are the most ethical occupation. And then no surprises with AMBOs and pharmacists and GPs and childcare workers kind of rounding out the top 5. But just a couple of very quick facts. The rising cost of living is seen as the top ethical challenge for 2024. Bizarrely, right down the list as an ethical challenge is government ministers and their ability to award government grants for projects. Found that one was interesting. One last one. The majority of Australians believe there's an ethical obligation for organisations to tackle climate change, even if it results in a loss of profit, job losses, and fewer jobs in the future. So really kind of interesting insight into the way we view the ethical challenges that we deal with in business these days.
Yeah, really, really interesting one.
All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks so much, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Don't forget to hit follow and join us online on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.